History is written by those who carry swords, but it is remembered by those who carry pens and resist. This is the story of a man who didn't just save a culture, but reshaped the minds of his conquerors. This is the legendary story of the man who Persianized the Arabs. He didn't just save a culture, he manipulated its destroyers to adopt it using their own language. The 7th Abbasid Caliph, Al-Ma'mun, who ruled between 813 and 833 AD, famously said, "The Persians ruled for 1,000 years and did not need us Arabs, even for a day. We have been ruling them for 1 or 2 centuries and cannot do without them for an hour." That shift in minds didn't happen by accident. It was the work of a genius who taught the Arab rulers how to use court language, how to rule, and how to be benevolent to their subjects. But his brilliance was fueled by a dark, hidden fire, a vow to restore the honor of a father who had been broken and wronged, and to save an oppressed people. This is the tragic life of Rouzbeh Dadoyeh, known to history as Ibn al-Muqaffa, the man who was turned to ash. Someone who saved ancient stories and history of Persia from absolute destruction and became an immortal name, which we should never forget. Rūzbeh was born in 724 AD in a Zoroastrian Sassanid noble family in Ghor, province of Pars, one of the main capital cities of the Sassanid Empire. His father would tell him stories of the old glory of Iran Shahr during the Sassanid period, about tolerance of different religions, different ethnicities, and the unthinkable, ironic unity between 2 enemies that have been at war for 7 centuries, Persia and Rome. It all started with a real, yet mixed with mythology, extraordinary story of a king of kings, Khosrow Parviz, or simply Khosrow II, falling in love with a Christian woman known as Shirin, which brought a strong unity between the Christian Rome and the Zoroastrian Persia after centuries of battle. Rūzbeh loved these stories and lived in his imaginary Iran Shahr, with these stories coming to life in vivid colors. But the reality was far different to the wonderful stories that his father would read him at bedtime. As he grew up and got a sense of understanding, he was confronted with the harsh reality of the shifting world and the brutality of their new foreign rulers. He eventually realized the depth of his father's silent suffering. To spare his son from anxiety, the father had never spoken of his struggles or how the occupying rulers had stripped him of his ancestral wealth. His father went through an absolute unjust cruelty. Dadoyeh, the father, was mutilated by the 7th century Umayyad governor of Iraq, Al-Hajjaj ibn al-Yusuf, under false accusations, not only being tortured, but having his assets seized. Dadoyeh, a Zoroastrian Persian nobleman, highly sophisticated and educated, was of Dehqan class, a class of people in the Middle Persia that were the link between aristocrats and commoners, having the sacred duty of educating the commoners about Iranian culture and history. After being accused with no trial, he was tortured by the Umayyad regime until his hand was a withered, shriveled knot of flesh. They gave him a slur for a name, Al-Muqaffa, the shriveled one, to further shame him and his family and descendants for the next generations. It It isn't mentioned in records what really happened to lead to those events, apart from an unfounded and unlikely accusation. Through connecting dots and analyzing certain events, we can come to a very strong conclusion that the ruling caliph lied and had strong prejudice against them, something they did to many other nobles to seize their assets to fund their war efforts.
The
historical record regarding Dadoyeh is a classical example of history written by the victors, or in this case, the survival of a nickname that told a story. While the so-called official story passed down through Arabic chronicles is that he was an embezzler, modern historians and analyzing the context of the Umayyad era and the events suggest a more political motive. He was accused of stealing tax revenues, and as a result, he was ordered by the notoriously brutal Umayyad governor of Iraq, Al-Hajjaj, to get tortured. His hand was crushed as a result. From that point onward, people called him Al-Muqaffa, as an insulting, humiliating tactic, the shriveled one. Rouzbeh would be stained and disgraced as a child to be called Ibn Muqaffa, or the son of the shriveled, just to add more humiliation to Dadoyeh's entire generation. According to how Rūzbeh will eventually get falsely accused of something in his later life, and how Dadoyeh was already a well-off Dehqan class nobleman, it would make sense that Al-Hajjaj also falsely accused him for ulterior motives. Based on recorded history, the Umayyad administration was famously unstable and troubled by tribal conflicts. Dehqan class noblemen were the first targets when a new government wanted to seize wealth to fill their own pockets. Accusing a nobleman would give the Arab Umayyads official justification for confiscating properties and assets. During the Umayyad period, Persian officials were often treated as second-class citizens and scrutinized by the Arab elite. Al-Hajjaj was also known for ordering mass executions and torture for slightest hints of disloyalty or suspicion, or simply dislike, not even factual crimes. The likely reality based on all of that and what modern historians suggest is that Dadoyeh was certainly punished and tortured as a political tool to terrify other officials or extract wealth during regime change, from Sassanid Zoroastrians to Islamic Caliphate. From a young age, despite what happened to his father, Rūzbeh didn't want any pity. He wanted revenge, and he would go on an impossible mission to gain the trust of his Arab lords and rise above them, despite being a second-class citizen, permanently labeled as Mawali, a convert who would never be considered at the same level of an Arab. His father, wanting the best for him, taught him about the technique of hidden transcript, a method many Persians would use through history till today, a method of writing or sharing information through an obscured narrative, portraying that the author is aligned with their oppressor and enemy, yet in plain sight, preserving and promoting their own stories, culture, and history. This in a way could be said about an Islamic historian, Al-Tabari, who was a Persian during the Islamic Caliphate. He wrote 30 volumes of history of Iran while glorifying Islam and Arabs. However, hidden within the lines, when he is insulting Persian freedom fighters such as Babak Khorramdin, he contributes over 100 pages to him and talks about his bravery and noble cause. Dadoyeh told his son, Rūzbeh, that this is our fight. This is how the Persian history and untold stories can survive. He advised them to never directly cross the caliphs and foreign rulers, and to always implant the real message in between the lines. Rouzbeh would become a great mind who would follow his father's lessons and preserve so much of Iranian history and even do the unimaginable of turning Arabs into Iranians without them even realizing. However, he had a burning fire inside of him, a need for truth and justice, a need to make the foreign elites pay back for what they did to his father. Dadoyeh invested heavily in Rouzbeh's education. He hired the best private tutors to teach him the Pahlavi language and the Middle Persian, culture, traditions, and history. And at the same time, he sent him to spend his youth in the deep desert with the Arabic Bedouin tribes, mastering the Arabic language with their dialect until he could wield it better than any native. He was a bridge between two worlds. He held the thousands-year-old soul of the Persian Empire in his heart and the razor-sharp eloquence of the new Islamic world in his hand, driven by a strong will to restore his father's honor and seek vengeance for the injustice. Driven by a fierce, quiet love for his father, he climbed the ranks of the high court to become a force that they couldn't ignore. He didn't seek blood, but justice, using his intellect to dominate the very men who had shamed his lineage. For Rūzbeh, every scroll written and every law drafted was a step toward restoring his father's stolen honor. And in an ironic manner, he Persianized the ruling Arab elites who had a superior complex, treating Persians as second-class citizens, naming them Dhimis, or even when converted, Mawali. The term Ajam, given to Iranians, was originally a derogatory name which till today is still used for labeling Iranians in the Arab community, meaning someone who mumbles or is mute, as when the Arabs took over, Persians had to speak their language, as otherwise they would not even be able to live a normal life, being dismissed by their new Arab lords. Trying to speak Arabic and not having the deep Arabic accent, the Iranians were mocked and humiliated by being called Ajam, or mumbler. Another term that is not very commonly used nowadays is Majusi, which is to label Iranians as Zoroastrian. The term comes from the corruption of the word Magi or Magi, which was something to label Zoroastrian priests or mobids. Interestingly, the word magic in English comes from this Persian word. Dadoyeh, someone who lived through this delicate, extremely unstable time with Iranshahr, or Iran, once a powerful empire crumbling and falling apart right in front of his eyes, had to devise a plan. The Persians could not pick up a sword any longer as the government had dissolved and disbanded, with the new rulers having a tight chokehold on the Iranian subjects and being closely monitored. Despite that, he always had a rebellious and patriotic attitude, as after all, he was of Dehqan class, a class who not only saw it as a responsibility, but a sacred duty to preserve Iranian heritage, culture, and history, as a way of honoring those who came before them and fought and sacrificed themselves to preserve the sacred multi-thousand years old identity. So he needed to find a balance, a smart and genius plan to preserve Iran's identity in these turbulent times, but without offending any of the new foreign lords' egos. During the Umayyad Arab rule, life was extremely difficult for Iranians or any non-Arabs within their own country. The Umayyads practiced a form of Arab exceptionalism. Even if a Dehqan converted to Islam, his label from Dhimmi would change only to Mawali. A Persian noble was technically inferior to even a poor Arab tribesperson in the eyes of the Umayyad state. They were often forced to walk behind Arabs in the streets and were paid less if they even served in the army. And typically, they wouldn't be even heard by authority if it was a claim against an Arab. The Umayyad would also charge the religious tax known as jizya on Persian converts to Islam. This was a deep betrayal of Islamic principles and fueled a burning resentment, as within Islam itself, it commanded no jizya taxation on Muslims. Because of the extreme discrimination and cruelty Persians faced by the Umayyad rulers, a silent revolution started to take place. The Dehqan class nobles became the secret engine of the Abbasid revolution. They used their vast local influence and wealth to fund underground movements. They supported the black banners of the Abbasids because the Abbasids promised equality for all Muslims, regardless of whether they were Arab or Persian. The Persians, with a vast knowledge of war tactics, provided logistics and the administrative expertise that allowed the Abbasid army to march from Khorasan to Iraq and topple the Umayyads. The revolution of Arab Abbasids started in 747 AD and concluded in the Battle of Zab in 750 AD, defeating the Umayyads, whose last surviving members who tried to run away got hunted down by the Abbasids to ensure none remains for any potential future rebellion or uprising. Persians were critical to this movement and victory over the Umayyads, not only through the wealth, intellect, and silent uprising, but also through their manpower and physical capabilities and genius. The Persian general known as Abu Muslim Khorasani, or his real Persian name, Behzadan, acted as the military commander and the architect of the Abbasid revolt and the final takeover in 750 AD. His story alone is a legendary epic, and how he was enslaved by the Umayyads at a young age and then released by an Abbasid family, who then is introduced to the anti-Umayyad doctrines and the Shiite movement. Unfortunately, after their immense help and dedication to this cause, being promised that Arab Abbasids would install absolute equality, the Persians and the Shia supporters of the Abbasid move all get betrayed, with Behzadan even getting assassinated in 755 AD by the orders of the second Caliph of Abbasids, Al-Mansur. He would get accused of being a Zoroastrian sympathizer, while in reality, Al-Mansur was concerned of his popularity and immense influence and support in the Persian society and even amongst Arabs. Keep the name of the second Caliph of Abbasids, Al-Mansur, in mind, as he will be an important character in the story. So going back to Dadoyeh, he was a Dehqan nobleman and someone who had his hand crushed by the Umayyad ruler Al-Hajjaj, an ultra-Arab supremacist who destroyed much of Persian books and records, pushing for Arabization of the conquered lands with an iron fist and through extremism, only accepting Arabic written documents and anything only relating to Arabs. Al-Biruni, one of the major scientists, writers, and astronomers of the 11th century Iran and Islamic Golden Age, a very revered character even in the Arab world, famously wrote that Al-Hajjaj of the Umayyad Caliphate killed all of the scribes, writers, and historians of Khwarizm, a Persian city which is now part of the modern-day Uzbekistan. He further explained that he destroyed all of their books and records, showing how Al-Hajjaj was a destroyer of Persian culture, heritage, and history, including a lot of Greek and Indian documents. But his extremism only led to the opposite outcome, with Iranians becoming even stronger patriots fighting with a pen, with a stronger noble motive. If the Dehqan class were tasked with the sacred duty of preserving the Persian culture and history, it would become embedded in the soul and spirit of all the Persians in later generations, seeing how they are indebted to all before them who preserved this beautiful and sacred civilization. Dadoyeh would become falsely accused embezzling tax revenue, but it's highly possible that he was in secret working with the Abbasid revolution to topple Umayyads. He was, however, very cautious and intelligent, advising his son to withhold and control his rebellious nature and utilize the hidden transcript technique, as direct resistance would only fail, and he would teach him to practice patience and restore and revive Iran with a pen and his intellect. Dadoyeh, amongst many other Dehqan class noblemen, would even invite Umayyad Arabs to their Persian celebrations to form connections and alliance with the enemy. Celebrations of Nowruz and Mehregan, ancient celebrations going back to thousands of years, with some estimates suggesting 12,000 years, but commonly accepted to be over 3,500 years. Celebrations that are still in place in modern Iran and amongst all Iranians. This would be while in secrecy, Dadoyeh would be a strong supporter of the Abbasid revolt, quietly providing wealth and support, acting more like a double agent. Dadoyeh, just like many other Persians, would convert to Islam, aligning themselves with the strong movement of the Abbasid Arabs, as they were promised equality amongst all Muslims, converts or native Arabs. However, the Iranians knew very well Abbasids were not their liberators, and they were not having sympathy towards them. They just simply played the cards that they were dealt, acting as catalysts between two rival Arab tribes in hopes of slowly reforming a conquered Iran and restore and revive their identity. While the Umayyad crushed his hand and gave him the humiliating label of shriveled hand, Dadoyeh acted as a patient saboteur. He used his other hand to help rebuild Iran from its rubbles. He didn't raise a sword. He didn't do what many Persian warriors and generals did in a valiant attempt to protect Iran by sword. Instead, he did something that they couldn't. He embedded the idea of identity preservation, something that would outlast hundreds and thousands of conquests and invasions, something that would turn its conquerors to its admirers. Rouzbeh would learn Arabic fluently, being amongst the Arab Bedouins, even excelling and exceeding in Arabic eloquence and traditions in comparison to the native Arabs. Despite speaking and acting like a native Arab, he had a burning drive, a motive that would shape a nation. He hadn't forgotten what they did to his father. He didn't forget the legendary stories that his father taught him about tyranny and conquest of kings and invaders, and he knew how to handle them. He knew history and mythology. He knew of the tens and hundreds of empires and nations rising and falling. He knew of high etiquette and Persian values and standards. And he knew about Asha over Darush, truth over deception, righteousness over corruption, and good over evil. And most importantly, he knew how to make an empire survive even after conquest. He didn't want to simply infiltrate the Arab elite ranks. He wanted to rule them through his genius and intellect and restore the honor of his father and Persia. Despite being born into a Zoroastrian noble family and keeping the sacred teachings of Zarathustra and Ahura Mazda, He converted to Islam and took the name of Abdullah to blend in. When the Umayyads took control of Iran Shahr, the actual name of Iran during Sassanid period, which essentially means the land of Iranians or Aryans, they realized that they cannot run the large empire by sword and need a governmental system. During their rule and the turbulent times, Rouzbeh manages to rise in rank and become a Katib or Dabir or High Court Secretary, doing all the administration work, bringing Sassanid court etiquette, tax administration, and history into the Arab-dominated courts of Umayyad Caliphate. He would go on to become his father's biggest weapon for resilience, someone who would single-handedly Persianize the Umayyad Caliphate, an Arab ethnocentric ruling dynasty, without them even knowing. Rūzbeh would be a rare talent who mastered the Arabic language, that he would have the eloquence of native desert Arab poetry, but with the structural logic of a Persian philosopher. He would become the pioneer of the adab, which till today is known as etiquettes and manners, something that was a Sassanid Persian court literature and etiquette. Despite his title of a mawali, being a second-class citizen, he would rise to enormous power to the point of being able to criticize and even ridicule the Arab elites and rulers. He began his career as a court secretary, serving under the Umayyad governors in modern-day Iraq, who wasn't just taking dictation, but drafting the decrees that kept the province running. He would translate Kalila wa Demna, originally a book written by an Indian political scholar in the early 6th century, which would later be translated into the Pahlavi text by a Sassanid scholar called Borzoyeh or Borzo in the 6th century, and eventually find its way into the Umayyad courts, translated into Arabic by Rūzbeh in the 8th century. The book is a series of fables through animal characters, which is meant to train and teach young princes on how to rule. Interestingly, there is a chapter in the book which educates and teaches new rulers on how to use deception in certain circumstances for survival in turbulent times, and in order to infiltrate the enemy's courts and destroy them from within, and also how to practice patience and form strategic alliances for survival. This is something Rūzbeh would do exactly, and something his father, Dadoyeh, taught him. But unfortunately, Rūzbeh's rebellious nature was far greater. When the Abbasid caliphs took over in 750 AD, they were warriors with no plan. They systematically killed and eradicated all Umayyad members, including court secretaries and patrons. Interestingly though, not only did they spare Rūzbeh, but they placed them in their new courts, which shows the significance of his work and how he might have been a key character in the Abbasid revolution. He swiftly introduced many more books into the Arab world through his delicate translations, which would be even refined into Arabic traditions so they would associate themselves more closely. He even taught them of the Sassanid court system, the hierarchy, the elegant dresses and clothes, and the Persian terminologies. He did something unthinkable. He restored and revived Iranian traditions and stories. He Persianized the Arabs. He introduced the divan, the complex bureaucracy. He taught them the adab, the high culture of the court. He showed them how to sit behind the royal curtain, how to collect taxes, and how to act like sacred monarchs of Sassanid Empire. He was a conquered man who was reviving the Sassanid Empire through the new foreign rulers, just with a different language and religion. However, as he learned from ancient stories and history, arrogance, power, and fear of losing it always corrupts the rulers. He was extremely influential and powerful through his intellect, which created a sense of clash of egos and political threat. While the Abbasids admired and relied on his genius, they were simultaneously terrified of his influence and his foreign Persian intellectual independence. He goes on to write the Risala fil Sahaba, which was a how-to guidebook for restoring the government, the army, tax reforms, and legal codification, especially after a regime change. He wrote this for the second Abbasid Caliph, Al-Mansur, the same man who orders the execution of the Persian commanding officer Behzadan in 755 AD, just 5 years after securing them a victory over Umayyads. Despite the Abbasids promising equality and a more fair government, the second Caliph, Al-Mansur, often described as the main founder of the Abbasids, displayed he as anything but fair and tolerant, who equally to Al-Hajjaj from Umayyads, the previous ruling Arab Caliphate, ruled with an iron fist, killed, tortured, and destroyed. One of Rouzbeh's greatest acts was a secret rescue mission. He was too familiar with the Sassanid ways of ruling and infiltration. He did something remarkable. He used the hidden transcript tactic for a noble and righteous cause. He would be translating and rewriting ancient books from Iran, from the Sassanid period and dynasties prior to them, such as the Parthians, another great empire that rivaled Rome, and the Seleucids, a Greek or Hellenistic Persianized empire formed after Alexander the Great. And of course, the father of all Persian dynasties, the Achaemenids or the Hachamenesh. He knew the Pahlavi language or Middle Persian would become obsolete, as the ruling caliphate enforced use of Arabic only. So instead of rewriting these books into Arabic to preserve them, he changed the names of the kings and characters from ancient Persian books and made them appear as prototypes for the ideal Islamic ruler. One book which he most likely translated, and a book believed by many historians to be preserved by him, is a book known as 1001 Nights, with the original Persian book being known as Hezar Afsan, or Thousand Tales, with the original book unfortunately being lost, like many others. Using the hidden transcript technique, many future Persian writers and poets would secretly preserve the name of certain characters and historic events, while in clear sight, being invisible to oppressive rulers. Rūzbeh preserved the ancient Persian histories, the Khuwadai Namak, which were being lost to time. Rūzbeh translated them into Arabic to keep them safe. He didn't know it back then, but he was saving the soul of a nation. 2.5 centuries later, those very translations would land on the desk of a poet named Ferdowsi. Using the prose Rūzbeh saved from the flames, Ferdowsi would write the Shahnameh, the epic that revived the Persian identity and language, reverting the language from Arabic to Persian in the 10th century. Without the son of the shriveled one, Persia's history would have been silenced. I have made an in-depth video about Ferdowsi. If you haven't watched it yet, you can do so by clicking on the link in the description. While not clearly recorded, Dadoyeh, the father of the smartest man during early Abbasid and Umayyad rule, passes away in the 750s, seemingly after Abbasid takeover from the Umayyads. Unfortunately, Rouzbeh becomes heavily distraught by his father's passing and loses his sense and starts playing dangerous games. Too smart for his own safety, he broke one of the golden rules his father taught him: to be discreet and to never directly insult or criticize the foreign rulers. He would openly start to mock the governor of Basra, Aman Sufyan, who had a massive prominent nose alongside many other ruling class elites. Throughout his career, he was mocking and criticizing the Caliphate through his translations and books, but they simply did not have the wit to realize. He employed the hidden transcript technique very well and was very careful. The book he translated and changed to become the Arabic Khalileh and Demne was more like a satirical book where he indirectly criticized and mocked the Caliphate and its rulers while teaching them how to be Persian. He mocked al-Mansur's personality and policies through the fables. In his stories, the lion, who was representing the king, was depicted as powerful but easily manipulated by flattery and someone who was quick to execute his most loyal friends out of paranoia. This was an indirect representation for al-Mansur. Rūzbeh would go so far as adding an extra chapter through his own wit to the original Indian version, a chapter known as the Trial of Demne. In the original, the treacherous jackal gets away with his crimes, but Rūzbeh added this chapter so that Demne is caught, tried, and executed. This was a subtle threat and warning to the Abbasid court about the consequences of corruption and the importance of a fair judicial system, something al-Mansur was not known for, as no children or wife is recorded in history for Rūzbeh to have, and through historic events where Persian poets, scholars, and writers would usually leave their documents and written works as their legacy or as children. It is very likely Rūzbeh never married and dedicated his life to this noble cause of writing and preserving Iranian history and identity. It would be only natural that after the passing of his father, the hero he looked up to throughout his life, the only one that he had in his life, Rūzbeh wouldn't have a strong will to continue and live, as he would lose his muse and source of motivation. Rūzbeh, overcome with sadness, guilt, and grief, wouldn't stop there. He would start to use his wits to heavily criticize and mock Sufyan ibn al-Mu'awiyah, the governor of Basra in modern-day Iraq, directly, not indirectly anymore. According to records, Sufyan had a large nose and Rūzbeh didn't let that go unnoticed and would ensure his nose, alongside himself, are both greeted and paid respect to. On top of that, he would use witty jokes to mock Sufyan's intelligence. Every time Rūzbeh entered the room, he'd greet Sufyan by saying, "Greetings to you, both." It was a costly joke that would cost him his life, but some sort of a payback in the form of insult for the label that they had unjustly given to his late father and what they had physically done to him. The final strike from him was the Aman, a truce letter for the al-Mansur's rebel uncle who had been defeated. Al-Mansur used Rūzbeh to negotiate the terms of peace and truce to stop their constant tribal conflicts. Rūzbeh, having a burning resentment, he wanted to make the caliph pay. He wrote it as a legal cage and insult. He included clauses that said, if the caliph harms his uncle, his multiple wives would be automatically divorced, his slaves would be automatically freed, his subjects would be automatically released from their oath, and worst of all, al-Mansur would be considered an infidel or kafir. The caliph al-Mansur was livid. He didn't see a peace treaty. He saw a secretary trying to put a leash on a king. He asked his court, "Is there no one who can rid me of this man who thinks he can bind my hands with ink?" And that is when both al-Mansur and Sufyan, incapable to outwit and went through intelligence, devised the treacherous plot against Rūzbeh. In 757 AD, Sufyan, the man with the nose, finally got his revenge. he lured Rouzbeh into a house and lit a furnace. His story tells us that they dismembered his hands first, and then his feet, and threw them into the flames while he was still conscious. Watching the horror, while Sufyan and his thugs mocked and took pleasure in Rouzbeh's suffering. According to historical accounts, notably recorded by Ibn Khalil Khan, as Sufyan mocked Rouzbeh while torturing him, he asked him if he found the Persian wisdom helpful now, and Rouzbeh reportedly remained eerily calm while he was trembling in pain and shock through blood loss. He did not beg for mercy. Instead, he stoically and silently watched his limbs burn and famously said, "You are killing a man who, if he were to live, would have given you and your people knowledge you have never known." This was his final act of defiance against the foreign invaders, showcasing the Persian resilience, that its identity will not die with one man, and that despite punishing his body, his spirit remains for eternity. And now, after almost 1,300 years, I am making a video in his honor. The mind that had translated the world's wisdom from India, Persia, and Greek cultures, the hand that had saved the Shahnameh, and the spirit that had civilized an empire were all turned to ash. He was only 36 years old, and all because the fragile ego of a tyrannical ruler was shattered. The same man that killed the Pahlavan, Behzadan, a mighty commander who was the architect of Umayyad's fall, also killed the brain and the spirit of a civilization. I wonder what was going through his mind when he was in absolute pain, yet silently watching the flame in the furnace. Maybe he saw his late father, with his hands not being shriveled anymore, stretching them towards him and welcoming him to the sacred Zoroastrian fire of Atar, transcending from this cruel world, joining a proud father, remembering the lullabies that he would sing him and the magical tales when he was a kid. After all, Rūzbeh accomplished his decades-long vengeance plan. He defeated the tormentors of his father in ways that they could not imagine. They ruled over an oppressed empire with an iron fist, yet Rūzbeh defeated them with words and wisdom. They were incapable of fighting a powerful and influential character like him, so in a desperate attempt, they took his body to silence him, as they could not take his spirit. He not only restored the Iranian heritage and its master books known as Khuwādai Namag, but also Persianized the tyrannical rulers who would ironically promote and spread the Persian culture, etiquettes, and heritage, and build the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, having large collection of Persian books from Gondashapur Academy, an ancient Persian academy. With this final sacrifice, he not only showed his never-dying resilience and love for his nation, but he restored the honor of his father, who loved him dearly. While many Sassanid Persian books were getting burned and destroyed, or simply lost as the language slowly changed to Arabic from Persian, he translated them and on surface made them Arabic so they would survive. But deep down, it was as Persian as it could be. A Javid Nam, meaning someone with an immortal name, a legendary character within his own stories and epics. Behzadan, the Peker, or the body of Iranian resistance, and Dadoyeh's teachings, which would result in a brilliant man, Rūzbeh, Ruh, or the spirit of Iran's resistance helped Iran survive change of time and on the brink of extinction, when the population even dropped to a mere 250,000 after the Mongol invasion. They still rose from the ashes and blood in the honor of their immortal names, and thousands or millions just like them who have been fighting for centuries. The cruel world kept his gifts but murdered the giver. The Abbasids flourished in the golden age that he built for them, using the very systems that he died to create. Rūzbeh, just like his father, was accused of a false crime after his death. He was accused of being a zandaqa, which was an excuse to justify this unjust murder and torture, the crime of heresy, labeling him as a Zoroastrian who pretends to be a Muslim, a crime so many Iranians died for during the Caliphate. While he could very likely be a Zoroastrian in secret, he was certainly killed for the crime of shattering the fragile egos of tyrants. But look at the history books. His ink was stronger than their fire and swords. Every time a Persian child reads about their heroes, or Arab scholar writes with elegance, Rouzbeh is there watching over. He was the man who was thrown into the fire so that the universal light of civilization would never go out.